psychic power. I want to tell you about the magic of psychic power and how to use it to transform your life. First of all, we must nail down the basic idea that you can have a larger share of the better things in life. And right now, you are about to start an adventure that will reward you richly for as long as you live. You are going to learn new, fresh ways to apply your psychic power to gain more of everything good, more happiness, more love, more money, and more peace of mind. Nothing in life is more fascinating than understanding and then harnessing the amazing power of your psyche. This course will show you how. As a first step, visualize a big pie cut in 5 equal pieces. Next, visualize 5 people about to sit down to eat this pie. We'll call the pie everything good in life: happiness, love, money, and peace of mind. The 5 people who are about to eat this pie are 5 people of similar intelligence, education, and background. Now remember, this pie represents everything good in life. The next thing we must do is divide the pie among the 5 people. Here we are going to divide the pie in the precise manner that all good things in life are divided. And here's what will happen. 4 of the 5 people will share 1 piece of pie. The other person will have 4 pieces of pie all to himself. Imagine, 1 person of the 5 will have 4 times as much pie as the other 4 people combined. This is our first law. Learn it well. 80% of everything good is owned by 20% or less of the people. This is conservative. Let's see how it works out. 80% of all of the corporate securities are owned by 20% or less of the people. 80% of the real estate is owned by 20% or less of the people. 80% of the income is received by 20% or less of the people. Over and over again in many different ways, this has been demonstrated to be true. For example, 80% of the scientific breakthrough, the inventions, the significant books, the truly great art of this world are created by 20% or less of the people. 80% of everything sold is sold by 20% or less of the salesmen. 80% of the ideas that have commercial significance are developed by 20% or less of the people. 80% of the real fun of life is enjoyed by 20% of the people. And there is no doubt about this. 80% of psychological love and physical love is enjoyed by 20% or less of the people. As we examine this law, we see that it applies to everything tangible, such as money, stocks, real estate, business and professional success and achievements. But does it also apply to happiness? Again, there is every indication that it does. 1 family in 5 enjoys as much happiness as 4 families combined. All good things are distributed roughly in this 80-20 proportion. The 80-20 law applies whether we are talking about personal incomes, sales volume, happiness, business success, or any other activity. It is a law, and you can no more argue with the 80-20 law than you can argue with the law of gravity. And like all natural laws, it cannot be repealed. So burn the 80-20 law into your memory. Now, our next step is to understand the why of this law. Learn to understand it so you can profit from it instead of being damned by it. Why does 1 person in 5 get 4/5 of the everything good pie? How does this person differ from the other 4? What is the secret? How can you enlarge your share of the pie? How can you become the 1 in 5 who enjoys as much as the other 4 combined? Experts who study this matter point out that if we divided all the money, all the wealth in our nation among the people equally, it would only be a matter of a few years until the wealth would be owned on the proportionate basis that it is owned now. In other words, if everyone were forced to start over with an equal number of marbles, it would only be a little while until one fellow in 5 owned 4 marbles in 5. The fact that income and wealth, even if equally divided, would soon end up very unequally divided proves one thing, that the one person in 5 who owns 80% of all good things is different from other people. There is something special about him. What is this something? Is this enormous difference explained by intelligence, the native ability to think? Success would be simple to explain if it were related directly to intelligence, but it isn't. Nor is success related to health or luck. That intangible something that accounts for the amazing difference in achievement and happiness of people is far more elusive, far more difficult to pin down than something simple like intelligence quotient or luck or education or childhood advantages. In a nutshell, the difference is found in the way we plan, organize, and control our psychic power. Let me repeat. The difference between the successful and the mediocre is found in the way we plan, organize, and control our psychic power. An analysis of failures, the 80% who are caught in the grip of psychological slavery, mediocre achievement, boredom, and frustration, an analysis of these people shows they commit day in and day out 7 daily psychological sins. Here they are. Now check each one carefully. These are the sins that explain why 4 out of 5 people spin their mental gears and end up in the land of nowhere. Sin number 1, letting other people run your life instead of managing it yourself so you can do what you want to do. Committing this sin means you surrender to the dictates of second-class people. You let them pull you down to their level of mediocre income, mediocre achievement, and mediocre happiness. Second-class people say, you ought to do this, so you do it. Second-class people dictate the kind of job you should have, the way you should perform on that job, the way you should behave in your private life. Misguided husbands, domineering wives, overbearing employers, and interfering relatives frequently are these other people who run your life. One way to find out whether you are committing this sin is to analyze the most recent decision you made. Did you choose what you wanted to choose, or did you choose it on the basis of what other people might think? Sin number 2, blaming other people for your bad luck and tough breaks instead of blaming yourself. The individual with the disciplined psyche creates the circumstances that influence him. But most people do not have a disciplined psyche. Napoleon once said, circumstances, I create the circumstances that affect me. So it is with successful people. This sin of finding a scapegoat is so easy, it's deceptive. People you know commit this sin when they analyze why they aren't getting ahead at work, or why they are not selling, or why they make low grades, or why someone else moves up the ladder while they stay near the bottom. Sin number 2 is a bad one. You'll discover, as you study your own psychic management, rewards come to individuals who succeed in avoiding this psychic sin. Sin number 3, selling your ability short, showing subconscious contempt for your own potential. Without exception, the failures in this world think they are inadequate, think they will finish last in the race, and think the good, wonderful things in life are beyond their grasp. It's often said, familiarity breeds contempt. So it is with the respect we show for our own brain power. Every day, tens of thousands of people think original, creative, worthwhile ideas, only to dismiss the idea because it came from their brain. It's so easy to commit this sin. In truth, We make two big mistakes about intelligence. We grossly exaggerate other people's intelligence, and we grossly underestimate our own. Sin number 4, allowing fear to dominate every phase of your life. Fear of other people, fear of giving something a try, fear of economic disaster, fear of self. These are some of the common fears of people who commit this psychologically deadly sin. Remember, fear, not confidence, rules the world. Fear is behind all failure. Sin number 5, failing to manage and direct your psychic processes, to organize your mind to achieve goals. That great horde of second and third class performers have this in common. They have no real purpose for being alive. They mentally drift. They do wishful thinking instead of purposeful thinking. Only a very, very few people have bothered to write down on paper what they expect to accomplish. Only a very few have a will for living. They drift, disorganized, not knowing where they are, or worse still, where they are going. They are taking a trip through life with no map. As a result, that powerful device, the brain, fails to perform at anything near maximum output. Sin number 6, becoming so involved in yourself and your fictional inadequacies that you cannot learn the magic secrets for winning command of others. Success requires the ability to influence other people, but this ability can't be developed if you are completely involved in thinking only about yourself. In today's complex society, you must be able to persuade other people to your point of view if you want to achieve at a high level. But nearly everyone commits this sin. Nearly everyone asks himself, what's in it for me? Instead of asking, what can I do for the other person? Successful folks know if you want to get, you've got to give. Sin number 7, failing to believe, fully, completely believe that you can make your mind function the way you want it to function. Failing to believe that you can win, that you can succeed, that you can earn more money, have more influence, achieve real peace of mind is this sin in action. Nearly everyone has heard some version of the philosophy, faith will move mountains, hundreds of times. But here again, the typical person you know shows contempt for this great wisdom. He knows that faith doesn't work. The person who achieves controls his thinking. He doesn't let his thinking control him. I hope at this point you are ready to say, I want to move up, out, and beyond. I want to find more happiness. I want to enjoy the good life. I want to succeed. If you are ready to make that commitment, then let me urge you to start now. Here's a game to play when talking to a small group of people. Pick out one individual who looks like a good sport and say to him, I'm going to ask you a question, and I must have your answer in 3 seconds, okay? A baby was born just a few minutes ago in a nearby hospital. Now, before I count to 3, tell me what you feel is the approximate life expectancy of that baby in days. The most frequent response is, I've never thought of it that way, but I'd guess, about 100,000 days. The correct answer is approximately 25,500 days. Yet, most people, even engineers with years and years of slide rule experience, will typically guess 100,000 days. Now, anyone born 100,000 days ago would have been born about 80 years before George Washington was elected president. Talk about a strict rationing board. Life is about the tightest commodity available. Only 25,500 days on the average. When you think of it this way, you begin to appreciate what Disraeli meant when he said, life is too short to be little. Today and every day, roughly 5,500 Americans die. In a year, Our total death toll is equal to twice the population of metropolitan Atlanta. Now, death itself isn't sad, because it is a natural thing that must happen to each of us. Death is just as much a part of nature's plan as is birth. What is sad is the fact that most of these 5,500 people who will die today never really enjoyed the trip. Now, how to break the bonds of psychological slavery. Only a little over 100 years ago, there was still a great deal of slavery in the United States. Some human beings were actually owned by other human beings. They were bought and sold and treated in much the same manner as cattle. Insofar as you are concerned, an even worse form of slavery exists today. I call it psychological slavery. It's a form of bondage in which the vast majority of people owe their souls to someone else. It's a form of slavery which finds people doing work they hate, living in an environment which they don't like, going places they don't want to go, doing things against their will, and in many, many other ways, surrendering to the will of other people. People who enjoy the good life, people who climb ahead, people who get where they like to go, are psychologically free. Let's look now at how you can conquer 6 specific forms of psychological slavery. Number 1, what will other people think of me? Slavery. Number 2, I'm certain to fail. Slavery. Number 3, it's too late. Slavery. Number 4, I'm a slave to security. Slavery. Number 5, past mistakes. Slavery. Number 6, I'm trapped by my environment. Slavery. Now, let us really consider, what will other people think of me? Perhaps the 5 words in the English language which do most to enslave people are these. What will other people think? What will other people think is one of the most common and destructive forms of psychological slavery. It ranges all the way from, I've got to mow my lawn once a week, because if I don't, the neighbors will think I'm shiftless, to, I won't say anything at the meeting because the others will think I'm just trying to make points, to, we've got to go to the party or it won't look right, to, I can't wear that. If I do, they'll laugh at me. Other people's slavery is strong, powerful. Other people's slavery explains why there's so much conformity in the world. It helps explain why too many women fix their hair like other women, why most salesmen sell just like other salesmen, why people live boring, unhappy, unsatisfying lives. Other people's slavery kills your creativity and your personality. It destroys your ability to have the kind of fun you like, to go where you want to go, to do the things you want to do. Not only are most people slaves to what other people think, but they also make the stupid error of listening to the advice of other unqualified people. Advice is everywhere, and most of it is free. Your neighbor, your relatives, your associates, just about everyone you know is eager to advise you. You have perhaps a dozen or more unpaid voluntary consultants on your self-management staff. These consultants, even without your asking for it, advise you on everything from rearing children to caring for your health to making your investments. Psychologically immature people follow the advice of these self-appointed consultants who usually know little of what they talk about. Rather than trust their own judgment or seek the advice of a competent, trained person, these people listen to and follow suggestions of second-class people. Is it any wonder the advice is usually wrong? Accepting advice from just anybody who happens to be around is like taking a fine new sports car to an alley garage to be worked on. You are too important to be worked on by any alley-type advisor. Go first class in selecting your consultants to serve on your self-management task. Now, even when you visit paid consultants like attorneys and accountants, use your own judgment as a final check. Make this a steadfast rule. Seek the comments and suggestions of big people, people who know from experience. The other critics I dismiss completely. They aren't important. Measure the size of your critic before you pay much attention to what the critic has to say. Here is another exceedingly common form of psychological slavery, the I'm certain to fail slavery. People who have surrendered to this kind of slavery continually think, I haven't got a chance, I'll fail, I can't get the better job, I can't earn more money, the whole world is against me, my boss doesn't think much of me, and on and on and on. All of the defeated slaves in this category have this in common. They have an unfavorable self-concept. They feel of themselves. They cannot see themselves in true perspective. An internationally respected Ohio State sociologist decided several years ago to try and find out why the lives of two boys from the same slum often turn out so radically different. One may become a great surgeon or a successful businessman, while the other may become a hunted criminal. To do this research, he selected two groups of sixth-grade boys in two elementary schools in Columbus, Ohio, that were known as delinquency areas. One group was considered trouble-prone by teachers, parents, and friends, while the other group was selected as non-trouble-prone. Over a period of 5 years, the two groups panned out just as anticipated. The good boys kept out of trouble, and the potentially bad boys got into trouble. Over 39% had been in juvenile court an average of 3 times. Now, here's the most significant feature of this research. The bad group of boys expected in advance of any difficulty to get into trouble. The typical boy in this category believed he would get in trouble with the law. He felt his friends would get in trouble. He doubted that he would finish school. He believed his family was no good, and so on and so on. Meanwhile, the good category of boys had just the opposite viewpoint. The youngster in this believed he would stay out of trouble. He believed he would succeed in school. He also believed his family was for him, and so on. Now, there you have a carefully conducted research study that proves thinking does make it so. You can apply this discovery in other directions too. For example, the girl who thinks she is ugly gets uglier. The girl who thinks she is beautiful gets more beautiful. The young attorney going into practice for himself who thinks he'll fail at best will be only mediocre. Meanwhile, his companion who feels he will succeed in private practice almost invariably does. Only a miracle can produce a victory for the football team that knows it will get beat. The excessive smoker who gives up cigarettes telling himself, I know I can't quit, never really does. I'm certain to lose slaves can cure themselves, but it takes a change of thinking. Here's how to break the bonds of I'm certain to fail slavery. First, hold positive chats with yourself. During an average day, you spend perhaps 100 minutes talking with someone else. If you speak at about the average speed, you say between 10,000 and 20,000 words in a typical day. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But here is a surprising thing. These 10 to 20,000 words are only a small fraction of the words you speak to yourself. Talk is merely verbalized thinking. Sentences are just thoughts expressed in language. But most of your thoughts, the products of your brain factory, are never spoken to someone else. You speak them only to yourself. Most of your thinking is directed solely at yourself. That's what I says to me that counts. It's not what the fellow at the next desk, or the customer, or the boss says to you that counts most. The really important thing is what your I says to your me. Now, here is the point. When you talk to yourself, use good, positive language. Think why you can, not why you can't. Notice the key words Emerson used in commenting on the problems of individuals. He, meaning man, dismisses his own ideas without notice because the ideas are his. This is another way of saying that familiarity with your own mind breeds contempt for your own ideas. Think I'm going to succeed, not fail. When you think you'll succeed, your mind amazingly begins to find the solution for success. Think I'm a winner, not I'm a loser. Adopt a little of the Cassius Clay philosophy in this connection. Cassius, over a long period of time, told himself he was the greatest, until at least he had convinced himself. And that, in the final analysis, is the only person you will have to convince. Other people are automatically convinced you're great after you have convinced yourself. Now let us consider the I'm a slave to security. The extent of this kind of slavery is enormous. Many people even fight to achieve security. Yet, the more security we have, the less psychological freedom we can enjoy. The dramatic success of Steve Mcqueen, the famous star of TV and movies, illustrates how to overcome psychological slavery. Steve had one of those problem childhoods. He never knew his father. At 14, Mr. Mcqueen was such a problem child, he was placed in a correctional institution. After a hitch in the Marines, he went to New York and did all sorts of odd jobs. One day, a friend urged him to try acting. In relatively short order, he was a success. Steve himself outlined 3 rules he follows in his success achievement program. Rule number 1, be yourself. Dare to be an individual. Don't try to copy someone else's style. Rule number 2, study and work to improve yourself in your profession. Rule number 3, have a positive mental attitude and the courage to try. In other words, dare to take a chance. Note the words, dare to take a chance. If all you want is complete security, here is some advice for you. Go live in some public institution, an insane asylum, a poor house, or a jail. There you can be certain of a roof over your head, 3 meals a day, clothes to wear, and cigarette money. You will have absolutely no concerns regarding keeping body and soul together. Psychological slaves to security have this in common. They lack a controlled imagination. They turn on their imaginations to the mental TV station that has bad news about themselves. They build up monsters, and this is not difficult to do. If you wanted to, in less than 1 hour's time, you could conceive of literally thousands of bad things which could happen to you. Meanwhile, at the opposite side, the people who are aiming to get someplace have controlled imagination. They visualize good things happening to them. They visualize themselves having happiness, having money, having respect, having all the things that truly count. Now, here's the solution to overcome the slave to security problem. Learn to like living dangerously. Learn to like the difficult. Learn to like the unusual. And learn to like the unknown.
Consider another kind of slavery, the I'm trapped by my environment slavery. Your environment includes all of those things that surround you. Your environment, probably more than you can realize, shapes your attitudes, viewpoints, and philosophy toward life. For many people, environment is a form of psychological imprisonment, something that shades initiative, kills desire, and warps the personality. The case of Mrs. J.B. illustrates this form of psychological slavery. Mrs. J.B., an exceptionally attractive, intelligent, and ambitious woman of 26, presented this problem not long ago. She stated very quickly, "I'm married, have 3 wonderful children, the oldest is 5 and the baby is 2, and I don't love my husband. He says he loves me, but I don't think he does. I think he's just a coward, afraid to shift for himself. I've got a good job, and I love it," she continued, "but divorce is out of the question." And here she half smiled. "I can't murder him. There's the law. Oh, I've thought of committing suicide, but I can't, not with the children. And besides, I'm young and I would like to live, really live." As Mrs. J.B.'s story unfolded, it became clear that this was one of those truly sad cases of a marriage that was bad for all concerned: the children, the wife, the husband, the respective families, their friends, and their co-workers. Probing the problem in depth, a mountain of evidence added up to total incompatibility. Finally, Mrs. J.B. was asked, "You mentioned a few minutes ago that divorce was out of the question. Why?" This took some digging. While her religion permitted divorce under her circumstances and appeared justified in her case, she just couldn't face it. Finally, she explained it this way. "You see, my husband and I both come from the same small town. Our families know each other but aren't close. I simply can't break my parents' hearts by admitting failure. I know it would kill them to know of my troubles. I just couldn't face them. So I've been trying to keep up a good front." This, then, was the real reason for her psychological slavery. Fortunately, she was able to understand that all her parents wanted was for her to be as happy as possible. And while they wouldn't be happy to learn of her divorce, they certainly would not think ill of her. Parents are much more understanding and much more philosophical than young adults think. Remember, you're not a slave to your husband. Instead, you're a slave to your imagined reactions of your parents. After 6 months had passed, she looked excellent, full of life. She said, "I just had to stop by to tell you how things worked out. Guess what my dad said? He said, making a mistake in the first place wasn't nearly as bad as not doing something to correct it." It was obvious to me that Mrs. J.B. had escaped from her psychological prison. Now, many young men have gone into business with their father or father-in-law against their intuition and better judgment. Too often, under these circumstances, they feel psychologically trapped. Often, in such cases, these young men cause their parents far more displeasure than if they had simply insisted on doing what they wanted to do. Young people who go to college only because parents went there, people who settle down in their hometowns when they really like to live elsewhere, and individuals who live in one section of town when they prefer another, are all examples of environmental slaves. There is only one sure cure for environmental slavery. That is, to make a firm decision to control your environment and not let it control you. Now here's how to bury those psychological skeletons. Every day, many people commit psychological suicide. These people kill a portion of what we commonly refer to as the conscience. These people use 2 weapons to murder their psyche. The first weapon is embarrassment, and the second is guilt. Thinking, for example, I'm second-rate, I can't do it, so-and-so is better than I'm not prepared, I made a fool of myself. These are some of the common ways we commit psychological suicide, using the embarrassment complex as the murder weapon. Now, what is guilt? Guilt comes from doing something you instinctively know is wrong. The guilt complex involves the soul. Lying, cheating, stealing, swindling, faking, hiding, these are the ways we commit psychological murder with the guilt complex. A guilt complex and the embarrassment complex create the same effect. They both inhibit our action, destroy our confidence, create worry, and make us do things in a fearful manner. Both complexes, guilt and embarrassment, are just as destructive of psychological tissue as cancer is of biological tissue. We cannot do things which we know are wrong and not pay the consequences. Nor can we live with the feeling that we are embarrassed and let our true inner psychic power show through. Now make no mistake about this. You cannot hide an embarrassment complex, nor can you hide a guilt complex. Both show through in essentially the same ways. The inability to look someone in the eye is one common example. Another is found in the weak, quivering, or nervous voice. The body always physically shows what the mind is thinking. These two psychic murder weapons, in combination, account for the vast majority of pill sales today. Embarrassment, guilt, inferiority, all of these things press so hard on the body that headaches, backaches, indigestion, constipation, and the great variety of minor body ailments all result. For example, as you watch the television commercial, you are advised to take for constipation. It will bring relief. But what caused the difficulty in the first place? Chances are it is the result of frustration created by one of the two psychic murder weapons, embarrassment or guilt. I'm sure all of us would like to have perfect reputations. All of us would like to come from families who have been nothing but kings, queens, presidents, secretaries of state, philanthropists, and so on. But this cannot be. Let's take time out right now to have a little fun. Let's try to answer this question. How many relatives do you have? Make one assumption. Assume it takes 25 years for a generation. Now, go back 25 years, giving or taking a few, and you find you have 2 parents. Go back 50 years, and you have 6 parents, 2 parents and 4 grandparents. Go back 75 years, and you've got 16 great-grandparents. If you're still with me, go back 100 years, and wow, you have 32 great-grandparents. In other words, every 25 years you go back in time, you double the number of grandparents. If all of your grandparents since 1725 were assembled, they would number around 500, enough to fill a medium-sized convention hall. But watch what happens now. Go back until the time the Pilgrims landed, and you'll find you have over 8,000 grandparents. Continue with your multiplication to the time when Columbus discovered America in 1492. And you have 125,000 grandmothers and 125,000 grandfathers for a total of more than 250,000. Perhaps we should stop here, because the number of your grandparents is getting too large to handle. Now, traced back to the year 1300, they would number roughly 40 million. If you went back to the time of the Norman conquest around 1000 A.D., you would discover you would have billions of grandparents, more than the total population of the world today. This brief game in mental gymnastics should convince us of 2 things. It is certainly true that your family in the broad, long-range concept can boast of relatives who were rich, great military heroes, leading statesmen, explorers, scientists, professors, and generally great individuals. But, likewise, every individual can look back and find that he has ancestors who were murderers, traitors, cowards, cheats, and just plain no goods. Perhaps you won't like to know this, but it is just as true as life itself. You are related, literally related, to every person on earth. Now, shame, embarrassment, feeling guilty all seem to disappear when we realize that each of us, rich or poor, smart or stupid, handsome or ugly, came from the same biological seed. Now, let's return from our philosophical digression. Let's go down the street where you live. It makes no difference which house you pick. The family in it has its share of skeletons. For example, one of the skeletons we try hardest to hide is marital problems. You think because you fight with your wife or husband that this is unique, something which you have got to hide at all costs, something for which you must carry an artificial front and thereby avoid detection. But I've got news for you. Marital problems are so bad that divorce is the ultimate result in 1/3 of our families. Now, at least another third of the families have such severe problems that they contemplate divorce. And the remaining 1/3 of the couples are not exactly getting along in a state of pure bliss. Again, remember, other people have their own skeletons and actually haven't got time to be thinking about yours. Your problems, your skeletons, are not unique. This is important. Stop depositing bad thoughts in your memory bank. In many ways, your brain can be compared with a bank. You deposit money in the bank or you take money out. The same deposit and withdrawal process takes place in your brain. You deposit thoughts and you withdraw thoughts. A thing to bear in mind here is that you, and only you, have the keys to this memory bank. Only you can decide what you will remember. While you can't always decide what you are going to withdraw from your memory bank, you have complete control as to how to interpret that memory. Thanks to the unique nature of the human mind, you have the power to interpret a memory as either positive or negative. The same memory will rock one person but amuse another, simply because each of us chooses to remember in our own way. What's the point? Choose to recall a memory positively. Learn to laugh at your defeats. Learn to recall it as a lesson, but never look upon it as a negative. Expand the famous quotation, "All things work together for good," to "All things can be remembered for good." If you can nail down these following points, you can write your own psychological emancipation proclamation. Remember, the only free people today are those who choose to be free. Why not join them? Now, conquer other people's slavery. Remember, other people are followers, not leaders. You're nobody until you are criticized for what you do. Respect your ability, your intelligence, your opinions. Develop a favorable self-image. Stop thinking you're too old. Age is mainly a state of mind. Learn to like living dangerously. Enjoy the fact you don't know for sure what will happen tomorrow. Regard your losses as part of your education. Remember, winning is a state of mind. Change your environment if you don't like it. Bury those psychological skeletons and stop trying to hide them. Now, these 7 points that I just mentioned will make a tremendous difference in your life. Now, a very important area in which to use your psychic power is to dominate and control others. How long has it been since someone, maybe an associate at work or a social friend or a neighbor, deliberately tried to insult you or embarrass you or belittle you or make you look like an ass? Now here is a bold truth, and mark it well. Remember it. Then learn how to handle it. What is this truth? Just this. There are some people who want to see you slip, see you suffer misfortune, see you get into a real tight spot, see you lose money, miss out on promotions. These are the people, these knockers, who can hardly wait to say, he got just what he deserved, or he always thought he was so much, now look at him. These people, and there are many of them, take a wicked form of delight in seeing things go wrong for you. Knockers work on a personal level. They specialize in making negative reflections on your character, your intelligence, your opinions and ideas, your possessions, and your friends. Learning how to handle belittlers, critics, and related forms of petty people is an absolute essential in your success-building program. People who delight in driving you down require special handling. And once you've mastered the technique of handling petty people, you'll tap a new source of inner strength and peace of mind, and you'll protect yourself from a trap that has cost other success-minded people fortunes. Did you know that you can win when you refuse to fight? In the early 1960s, a very capable former high school principal was running for Congress in a Midwestern state. This fellow had an excellent record. His integrity was tops. He was intelligent, and he looked like a sure winner. But about midway in the campaign, a small rumor got started to the effect that at a teachers' convention in the capital city 3 or 4 years ago, he had had an affair with a single teacher. When the candidate got wind of this tale, he was furious. It was a lie, and he proceeded to prove it. At every political rally, he made a point to denounce this vicious lie. Now, the rumor had never gained force. Most of the voters hadn't even heard it until the candidate himself raised it. But as always happens in situations like this, the more the educator professed innocence, the more the people believed he was guilty. They asked the obvious question: if he's innocent, why does he make such a point of pleading not guilty? It was like pouring a truckload of gasoline on a bonfire. The candidate, while truly innocent, convinced so many voters that he was guilty that he was soundly defeated. And worst and saddest of all, his own wife eventually came to believe it too. While she did not divorce him, their intimate relationship was forever destroyed. Many, many fine, capable people have crippled their careers by stooping to answer wild charges that few people believe. But when we rush in to deny an accusation, people, at least many of them, automatically believe that charges are true. Why else would you make such a point of defending yourself? Always laugh away the criticism. All the really top politicians learn that the only smart thing to do is to refuse to fight the obvious lies. In every presidential campaign I can remember, there is always the rumor that one candidate's wife is an alcoholic or is maritally unhappy with the candidate. Franklin Delano Roosevelt made friends, and he made enemies. He was controversial, but he consistently made more friends than enemies. This made him a winner. Almost from his first day as president, critics were taking potshots at Roosevelt. Over the years, these attacks grew worse. They reached a climax in 1940 when Roosevelt decided to break with an old tradition and run for a third term. Many people were really mad at Roosevelt by then. and much of this anger was released at Roosevelt on a personal basis. Attacks on Eleanor, digs at the Roosevelt sons for receiving military commissions the shortcut way, digs at the apparent special and unusual privileges which were passed out to friends of the family. The attacks were calculated to make Roosevelt mad, to get him upset, to cause him to lose his balance, to make him slug it out in a dirty, negative way. But how did FDR react? Did he defend his actions? Did he try to deny the special privileges his family enjoyed? Did he accept the challenge to fight in the gutter? No, not Roosevelt. Instead, the master politician, the political pro, handled the people who were trying to drive him down in a classic manner. This is how he did it. In a speech which was on the national networks, Roosevelt had this to say: "Eleanor doesn't care what they say about her. My sons don't mind what they say about them. And I sure don't care what the critics say about me. But folks, my dog Fowler is getting mad." Roosevelt simply laughed the criticism out of the campaign. Next time you're tempted to fight back, set the record straight and answer the lies other people say about you. Remember Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Roosevelt won because he resisted the temptation to fight petty people. And you will too. Go out and make your enemy your friend. A salesman, Carl S., who sold bricks, was being given a really tough time by a competitor salesman. The competing salesman regularly went around the territory telling architects and contractors that Carl's company was unreliable, his bricks were no good, and that business was so bad Carl's company would soon fold. Carl explained that he didn't feel the success of his competitor actually hurt him too much in the pocketbook, but it was a nuisance and did make him boil inside. Carl was really vocal on this. I was so damn mad at him on more than one occasion that I confess I wanted to break a stack of bricks over his fat head. Well, Carl explained, one Sunday morning in church, the minister preached a sermon on the subject, "Bless those who despitefully use you." I drank in every word, Carl continued. Just the Friday before, my competitor had cost me an order for 250,000 bricks by convincing a contractor that our white bricks would turn a greenish color after they were put up. This was a complete lie, and if ever I felt like I was being despitefully used, it was now. Carl went on. The minister offered his advice: go out and make your enemy your friend. The minister was very demanding on this. He contended, and he had a whole lot of examples to back him up, that you can turn an enemy into a friend simply by going out of your way to do a good turn for the enemy. Well, that afternoon, as I was arranging my next week's schedule, which is a Sunday afternoon habit of mine, I noticed where one of my customers in Virginia was requesting bids for bricks for a new office building. Now, the bricks specified were not the type my company could manufacture, but they were identical to the best line my competitor sold. I also knew that that foul-mouthed competitor had never been able to get to first base with this contractor. Here is where I faced a tough decision. If I followed my minister's advice, I would get in touch with my competitor, tell him about this opportunity, and wish him luck. But if I did what I really wanted to do, I'd simply feel it'll serve the so-and-so right if he never hears about this. Well, I struggled for a while, but the minister's voice, "Go out and make your enemy your friend," kept overpowering me. Finally, perhaps because I just wanted to prove the minister was wrong, I picked up the phone and dialed my competitor's home. His wife answered, and I asked to speak to him. Was he surprised? You can imagine his immediate reaction. He was almost too embarrassed to speak. He stammered around a little, but it was pretty obvious he did appreciate the help. In fact, As I talked to him, I decided to go even one step further. I promised I'd call the contractor in Virginia and recommend him for the order. What happened after that, I asked, for I certainly was eager to learn how the competitor acted when the fellow he had been belittling had done him such a good turn. Well, Carl explained, the good turn on my part produced some amazing results. Not only did my competitor stop telling lies about me, but get this, he's even sent some business he couldn't handle my way. Now, besides clearing the air, I've even made money following my minister's advice. Go out and make your enemy your friend. And there's one other result. I just feel better. Go out and make your enemy your friend. That's the third way to battle the petty fellow who's working overtime to make you look bad. Now, think about this. Be glad you're criticized. It's proof you're growing. The most sniped at, criticized, and bitterly attacked person in the United States today is not a criminal. He is not a murderer or a rapist awaiting the death sentence in some jail. He is not a spy, and he's not even a communist. He is the President of the United States. And the person most criticized 5, 10, 15, 30 years ago was also the President of the United States. The man with the biggest job is also the man most attacked. That's true in every walk of life. Big job means big criticism. Have you ever paused to notice who isn't sniped at? Check and you'll discover the only people free of the belittling tactics of petty people are those who are at the bottom of life's totem pole. In a corporation, the division chief may be criticized regularly by jealous subordinates and associates. But who knows the janitor? In Hollywood, top actors are belittled regularly. The starlets escape. The bigger you grow, the more you can expect to be criticized. So don't think it is abnormal when people try to beat you down. Regard it as a sign that you're growing. Now, to end with a cogent message, let me give you the magic lesson for making more money. Not long ago, the president of a bank was chatting about what it takes to succeed with a friend who was an educator and lecturer. He asked of the educator, "Do you have any disappointments in your teaching and lecturing efforts? Do you feel people in general fail to grasp any key elements of your wonderful success philosophy?" He didn't have to think long. He had, as a matter of fact. He said, "It's my inability to get everyone to understand what I call the magic lesson for making money. This lesson, when learned, automatically starts producing more money." In a nutshell, the magic lesson for making money is not to make money your primary goal. Now, this sounds odd, I know, coming from someone who thinks money is good, not evil. However, money to be made in large quantities must be a secondary goal, not the primary goal. For example, a tree farmer in Middle Georgia, his net worth today is in excess of $2 million, said he started from scratch only 16 years ago. He said, "You know, I started out in the late 1950s to become the world's best tree farmer. I love trees. I get enormous fun out of taking old, worn-out land and converting it into forests full of young, healthy pines. Now, I've made a lot of money already, and I stand to make a lot more. But the funny thing is, I have never been real eager to make money. Somehow, I've just concentrated on growing trees in the very best way possible, and money has taken care of itself." There you have it. Put money first, and you'll probably stay poor. Put your purpose first, and you're headed towards riches.